tumbling block wall planter, we're going to be using some Type Bond wood glue and some hot glue for the attachment. I just put a little smush of wood glue and hot glue right next to each other and then attach each piece. I find that if I just use the hot glue, I don't always get the best hold. So that little bit of wood glue really goes the extra mile to hold things together. For this project, you'll need to glue 5 of them together just like this, and you'll need 8 rows of them. That way we can overlap them, creating a lattice. For the planter piece, I'm going to be using one of Dollar Tree's wood pin holders. If you don't have one of these, you're welcome to just use some more of the Tumbling Tower Blocks to create you a little planter, put them together, you know, make a planter, attach them. But I have a little pin holder, so I'm going to be using that for this project after we attach all of these together. It's a good idea to take a minute and kind of eye up where you want these, remove the little section, and then just immediately put down your glue. When I was all done, I took some more antique Waverly wax to match our little pen holder and I stained them. For the attachment, I'm just using some of my favorite Gorilla Glue gel and smushing on behind there and all around where everything meets, and simple but yet really, really beautiful. Next time you're in Dollar Tree, grab some of these beautiful decorative wall mirrors. For this large wall decor set, we're gonna need 2 of these. And we're gonna need to remove the mirrors. So to do this, I kind of started, you know, bending it around and stuff, seeing if I could wiggle it loose. This was my first time doing this. Oh no, 7 years. I did better the second time around. This might not be the right channel for this, but who believes in superstitions? Because I'm in trouble. It's okay. I'm going to be okay, right? Okay, moving on. We're going to give these a coat of spray paint with this beautiful coastal sage color I've been in love with recently. If you want to put a sealer over these, you go right ahead. It's not going to hurt anything. For the large background, I'm going to be using 2 of these 11 by 14 inch artist canvases from Dollar Tree. And then I headed over to their little wallpaper section and grabbed this wallpaper. Obviously, use whatever design you want for the back. This is just what I went with. These are also super easy to use, but I will tell you, they will peel off fairly easy of the canvas. So it's good to use some extra spray stick or maybe even do a little bit of Mod Podge on there before you peel them on down and put them into place. This way you're just ensuring that whatever you're putting your wallpaper on, especially if it's a canvas, it's not going to go peeling back up anytime soon. And another good tip is just to take a scraping tool and rub that wallpaper all down on your canvas, whether you're using that extra adhesive sticky stuff or not, so this way you get all your bubbles out. Then I trimmed it on down to size, and if you're fine with your piece, leave it as it is. Me, however, I'm gonna bring on in my tumbling tower blocks so I can create a little trim around the edge. I wanted the trim white, and if you don't want to do tumbling tower blocks, you could obviously use a piece of wood or whatever, but I will tell you that this is painstaking, and it was at this moment that I realized I hated my life and I could not paint these individually like this. So a little tip if you love doing tumbling tower block projects is to gather them all up in a line like this and then apply your paint. Spray paint is also easy too, but if you don't want to use spray paint, this works really well. Take your heat gun them off, and then rotate them, paint the other side, and then rinse and repeat until your tumbling blocks are completely painted the way that you wanted. Now mind the little brown spots, okay, because they didn't all need to be painted. Not every side, people, okay? Just certain pieces, and I can be lazy at crafting sometimes, and I needed a lot of these little blocks. Give me a break. Give me some grace. You're not even going to notice the spots I didn't paint, okay? Then you're going to just take them and line them up. Keep in mind that there's going to be a little bit of hangover, okay? See how on each side there is a smidge of a hangover, and you're just going to adjust as you're gluing these down. I do recommend laying the pieces out on the long sides prior to gluing them down on the small sides because accidents happen. I knew it. I knew I shouldn't have did that. I did the corner first. Be mindful to just put the corner on last, okay? Put the corner on last, because if not, I got lucky that that didn't peel all the way out, but learn from my mistakes. I did notice that there were a couple little neutral spots left, so I took some of that white paint and just went around touching everything up. For the center of the mirrors, we're going to use some burlap, and to attach it, we're going to do that with some tacky glue after we cut a nice little circle that fits perfectly right in the middle where the mirror used to be. Remember that broken mirror? Yeah, I'm moving on from it, okay? Smush you some tacky glue down around the center and leave enough space to put some hot glue around the outside. This way that tacky glue is going to hold that burlap into place over time, and that hot glue is going to get it down into place immediately. You can skip this next part if you want, but my burlap cutting game was off. So I used some of this little teeny tiny white rope or cream colored rope to just tuck one in around the edges. Use whatever flowers you want for the center of your pieces. I decided to just roll on with some succulents, and please make sure to add some tacky glue onto the back of yours. And you want to make sure that you're adding some Gorilla Glue gel or some tacky glue or E6000 onto the back of this as well before you press it onto your piece. Using just hot glue on the edges will probably have this pop right off that wallpaper. For this large tumbling block centerpiece, we're going to be using tacky glue for the attachment. I was told this was the go-to for tumbling blocks. This was my first experience ever with tacky glue, and people, it did not go so well. I took this tacky glue and I've had subbies tell me about this. I've had, other channels to use it. It's not for me. Please don't mention it no more, okay? I'm gonna stick to my hot glue and my wood glue. This just, but I carried on. I mustered through it. I mustered through the pain. Once I got these all stacked sideways, I continued to just press them together in a manner that was allowing them to still fall apart. Apparently nothing I was doing with this, tacky glue, it could be operator error. I don't know, but it is not for me. I appreciate the information. It's not for me. As you can tell, I literally struggled this entire time trying to keep these pieces together and layer this piece, because you're using the tumbling blocks sideways, and then as you're going along, you're squeezing them in and trying to make sure they are sideways so that way you can bend them up. We are creating a table centerpiece with this, like a bowl type of look. When I got towards the end, I started pushing the tumbling blocks back a little bit, giving them just a small amount of space to really be able to tilt them upwards. And the piece started becoming fairly heavy and falling forward, so I started having to use some props to hold this up while I continued, as I dealt with the struggle of everything falling apart on me consistently with this tacky glue. I decided let's use painter's tape, and then once it dried enough, I went back in here with wood glue and literally painted the entire thing with all the little crevices that it had to make sure that this was going to stay together. Now, in case you're wondering, I did sit this in front of a fan with the tacky glue and the painter's tape all attached and let this dry. To do things separately, I did save you the individual spray painting. For those who don't want to watch it, you're welcome. This is a manipulatable, however you want to say it, wire. You can bend it. I'm going to put this on the top using a drill bit and putting a little hole in the sides of these tumbling blocks. Now, this was dangerous. Don't do it. I'm letting you know. I should have clamped this down to a table and then drilled through this like that. I could have easily put a hole in my finger, but you're going to want to put a little bit of a hole in here, about like 1/4 of a centimeter, or you can, you know, for crafter's sake, if you want to just hot glue it together, go right ahead. I wanted this to stay together. Now, I'm not going to lie, the wire will bend very easily even after you have it glued in, so you want to make sure that you are putting whatever florals on the top, that you're using something that you can take on and off. I just used some like trash twisty ties to put my florals on the top of here, so that way I can reuse this wire and bend it as I need to if it moves. So just a little tip. Now, I had to rig this up so the little wire would stay straight up while it was drying, but it's we are creating the cutest little farmhouse chair that you ever did see. I need 5 of these tower and tumbling blocks for the booty, and we're going to need to cut one of them in half for the stabilized part in the back, where your back goes when you put your butt in the chair and you lean your butt. Well, my butt's not fitting in this chair. I don't know if you've seen the size of that thing, but anyhow, you'll need to glue 5 of these side by side like that, and then you're going to need to add your wood glue in the back, a full size tumbling block, and then your little half one to start for your back brace piece section. I'm probably not explaining this well, but I'm trying. Listen, just we're rolling along. I use my nail to continue getting off the little globs of glue throughout the process. I do think I show that to you in a little bit, where you can see just all the pieces I was plucking out. This is how cute it looks. I love how this turned out so far. I pick up these little pegs, whatever you want to call them, at Walmart whenever I go. They're like $2 and change. You get some in a bag, a little baggie, and I like to have them because you never know when you're going to need them. Using the large ones, this wood slice bag of random stuff is from Michael's. I picked up on clearance for like $2. If you're not following me on Instagram, here's my plug. I do like to put little sales and clearance stuff on there just to kind of update you guys, because I'm not popping it on YouTube every day, but if I see it, I try to share it so you can get there if you're able to get there. I love how this turned out. I let this dry for 24 hours and then decided to bang it for your enjoyment to see how well it is holding up together. It's not going anywhere. Next, it's time for the fun part. We're going to use some clay to create some little accent pieces on the back of this chair. The clay and the little hole punch pieces are little fondant puncher things. I think they're fondant. I have them linked down below in description of some of my favorite things from Amazon. You're welcome to go check them out. They're really easy to use. I love the clay. The only issue I have with it is the clay has like some fuzzy hair, so you can take some water and kind of smooth that out so you don't have weird pieces sticking. And you can use your little dotting tool to create little extra accents, like I'm putting a little hole there in the flower. Let them dry a couple hours, and then I'm using some wood glue. Now they're not fully dry because I want it to be able to kind of bend them if I want it to. If you want them to fully dry, I would wait longer than just a couple hours, but I waited about 3 hours and I could still move them a little bit. So I put some wood glue on, attached them. If you want, you can skip this entire part. You don't have to do this if you don't want to. I like doing stuff like this. I hope you guys are enjoying it. Also, even with the legs with the chair, you don't have to put the pegs on there. You can just use towering tumbling blocks. But this is how I rolled with it. I hope you guys are enjoying the entertainment. I'm using different types of metallic paints to create highlights on these little accents, and then when I was all finished, I took some gems from the Dollar Tree and just put them on there. For this one, we're gluing long ways again, and we're going to attach them till we have 6 in a row. We're going to need 6. And I'm using one of these little crates from Dollar Tree, so I'm kind of just checking to make sure that it's wide enough. I guess this is kind of like a little hanging planter we're creating here. For the ends, you're going to need to cut some of these blocks in half because I'm not doing them right on top of one another. I'm making sure, here's me showing you the mess from the glue, because I'm constantly plucking the overflow of glue that is smooshing out all the creases. I don't appreciate it, but I mean, it's what I gotta do. It's what I gotta do. And then I'm taking the ends, the rough ends, and gluing them on the inside, keeping the smooth ends on the outside, and I just repeated the process throughout the entire piece and then glued them all together in a row. I do want to quickly mention that I just do not appreciate y'all not informing me how long it takes to glue these tower and tumbling blocks together with the wait time for the drying and the painting. I just, you know, I love y'all anyway, but you got me good with this video. Anyhow, I took and painted these all different colors. My girl Angela Jones DIY, I talk about her before, she made a little scrap wood piece and I love the way she painted it, so I kind of mimicked off of that. I will post it here for you. I took some wood glue and clamped this little box down and let it dry. Now I did put a layer of Mod Podge on this piece before I scraped down my vinyl here from the Cricut I cut out, just to make sure that we weren't pulling any paint up, and then I did another layer. I played around with this piece a lot before I started filming to get a good hold on it, and went with attaching the blocks side by side in sets of 3. This one is our middle block, and we're going to have to put a hole in it because we're creating a clock, which I picked up the pieces for that at Walmart. So we're going to need to drill a hole in this. I put so much wood glue on this, and way more than I put on any of the other pieces, because I knew drilling it, I needed to make sure this was such a stable piece. I made sure that the drill bit was larger than the mechanism that is going to go through the hole. Gotta clean up. Gotta clean up. I let all the pieces dry for about an hour and then started putting them together. This was definitely the longest piece because we're literally piece by piece, section by section, drying by drying, drying. And then on the edges, I did 4 on each side and then 3 on the top, 3 on the bottom, and started gluing them all together. So I wanted the idea behind this to look like bricks, like to make a faux German smear on this clock. See all the gaps? I'm going to treat them like bricks, and we're going to take and paint it first, so this way once we get our joint compound on there, this color shows through. So I just took 2 different variants of gray and painted it. I let it dry, and then once it was dry, we are going to then add the joint compound. I mixed some of this chalk paint in here to get the color on already, so I didn't have to worry about going over and repainting it once the joint compound was in there. And then I took a little bit of the joint compound and started smearing it in. You want to be careful this can get a little crazy, because as you're going along and you start to smear, it will just smear everywhere. And you're going to see me in a minute take some water and go over each of the little pieces, and then a paper towel, because I'm pulling some off. I want this to look like the brick is kind of breaking through a German smear. You don't have to do it like this. You could cover it and do less, but once it dried, this is what, well, this was before it dried. This is after it dried. I really loved. I let this sit overnight, let it dry, and then took a 400 grit sandpaper to it before applying a layer of this Mod Podge. I printed this piece out from my Cricut, and if you don't want to do this, you can pick these up at Walmart. I was going to use these initially and then decided that I'm gonna just torture myself and weed this piece. I will never weed this piece again, but I love it. I love it now that it's finished. I love the transfer tape. I found my boyfriend, fiance, whatever you want to call him, picked this up for me, and I really loved this transfer tape. I usually use painter's tape if you're familiar with me, but I'll probably start using this. I covered this with a layer of Mod Podge and then let it dry before I started putting in the little mechanism, and I decided to use these little pop-up adhesive things so it had a brace, and I did spray paint the little pieces black before I attached them. Why aren't you going on here? Just get in the hole. It works. I forgot to put the other hand on the clock. For real. I'm so done. I legit struggled with this whole piece for 2 days. 2 days. Anyhow, I added extra little tumbling tower blocks on the back so I could hammer in one of my little hammer sawtooth hangers. And I really, really am so stunned at how this piece. You can really customize this however fits your style. I customized it modern. You're going to take your tumbling blocks and put one right in the center. This I used as like a base point for where I was going to put my 2 side tumbling blocks, because you're going to take a pair of cutters. You can use a miter box if you want. You can use whatever floats your boat. I'm using my wire cutters from Hobby Lobby just to snip the sides. We're going to cover them anyway, people, so don't worry about it. And I'm going to just hot glue and wood glue these down, and you're going to let this dry for 24 hours once you have this all glued together before you start doing anything else with it, so it holds. I know you're thinking, Brandy, this is not going to hold. Listen, do I steer you wrong? I tell y'all what my real experience is, and I'm telling you this is going to hold. I even dropped this piece and it didn't fall apart. If you are not fuzzy inside about it, take a little paintbrush and go back over the creases and wood glue more before you end it up painting it. Do not do it after you paint it. In my opinion, it doesn't work as well. Anyhow, I spray painted this black. Then we're going to come in with our Dollar Tree stencil, and we're just going to add some stencils on here. You could leave it plain, you could leave this whatever color you want, paint it whatever color you want, whatever makes you use fuzzy inside. Again, I was going for a nice modern look and wanted this to add into my modern, you know, little staging things, and thought, you know, this is cute. And I, you know, if you guys are not familiar with me, I love palettes. You know, Dollar Tree palettes, they're my jam. You know, so I'm trying to, you know, give you guys inspiration, some ideas for these. I picked these brad nails up, or brad little things up at Michael's, and be safe when you're cutting the edges off if you're not using them for what they're meant for. I put it in my hand so the little metal pieces don't fly, and glued these. For this next one, it's gonna be nothing short of a pain in the But don't leave, calm down. Let me share this experience with you. So we're going to start off with my typical bond adhesions, which is Titebond wood glue and hot glue. Make sure we don't overlap the two so they don't smoosh together and ruin the bond totally. Overlapping the two can completely cancel out your bond and be a pain in the booty. And if you've used hot glue to attach your tumbling blocks, and you know it smushes in there and it creates these crusty bits. I use these tools I purchased off Amazon to always get that out, because before I discovered the tools, it was tearing up my fingernails. Anyhow, you're here for the project. So you're going to need 8 tumbling blocks glued together in a row like this. You'll need two of them, okay? And then we're going to start, look, this goes back to not all tumbling blocks are created equal. Look at this. Look how uneven these joints are. Just toss that sucker right out of frame. Now we need to make sure that our tumbling blocks are even, because this matters for this project, okay? You don't want it lopsided. I wanted to do this project thicker, but I was low on tumbling blocks. Okay, I had 3 packs left, so you're getting a skinny project. But I'm giving you the inspiration, so you'll see where I'm going and what I mean exactly by making it bigger and thicker. I know a lot of other creators always use something to keep their blocks even. I do not. This is definitely my first time ever. I see the little piece of wood down here. I'm using to kind of press my pieces on there to make sure they're all lined up. And I did this to start out because my 8 pieces in a row, my 2 rows over there, they were not stable enough to press against. They weren't completely dry, so I wouldn't recommend using them right off the bat. And the reason why I say this project was such a pain is because getting the perfect amount of wood glue and hot glue on those tiny little pieces that are connecting to one another, oh, this took me about an hour just to put the center together. And then this joint was sticking to my contact paper. I was like, we're about to rip up my whole staging area. It was a mess. There were bits all stuck to it, hot glue, wood glue. It was something. I've made a lot of tumbling tower projects, and I don't think any of them made a mess like this and stuck to everything. There was also an abundant amount of little glue strings just dangling everywhere. We don't want them bits all over our stuff, so I had to clean that up, then get all the extra crusties out, and this happened. So now in my mind, I'm like, oh, this happened on camera. I recommend these tools. I'm like, I can't recommend them anymore. And then I'm like, I kind of still like them. We're just going to hot glue them suckers back together. That's what I did, and it's working just fine. But in my defense, the set's only like $6, and it's lasted quite some time before it fell apart. And I just glued it back together, and we're good to go. So anyhow, okay, back to the project again. I alternated the wood glue and the hot glue at the ends here. I didn't show it to start, but I am here so you can see how I attached all these pieces, and I let this then dry for a full 24 hours. We are going to be attaching stuff onto this, and it's going to be hanging on the wall, and if you're using just hot glue, prepare yourself. It's going to fall apart. No disrespect to the hot glue lovers here, but you're watching me because you want me to be real with you, right? You want this to stay together. Put some wood glue on it, all right? Now, if you're just doing it for crafter's sake, don't sweat it, but otherwise, wood glue it. And we're going to use Waverly's white chalk paint to paint it. I know, I saved you the painting. Calm down, I know you're excited. We're going to need some things. We're going to need this palette box I recently found in a Dollar Tree browsing video. I'm super flippin' excited about these, but anyhow, and then we're going to need a knob or a hook or a hanger of any kind. I'm using this old beat up thing from a flip I did some months back. And here I'm just kind of waving this in the camera so you see what I'm about to use to create a little accent piece for our Dollar Tree tumbling block pegboard. That's what we're making. Now I'm super cheap and I like to reuse whatever, and I know I can reuse this twine to go on top of our other little accent piece, so I'm just cutting the ends off. And I'm not going to make you watch me paint, but whenever I'm about to decoupage anything, I put a light layer of white paint on it if it's going to help the light colored napkin shine through. And I'm going to use this timeless gray to create a faux frame around this, because we're going to create like a shadow boxed piece without using a real frame. We're kind of creating our own frame. Now, I've made many DIYs with these tumbling blocks, and I've had plenty of people comment about how do you keep the pieces. They look all gunky sometimes when they create them. Here is a little tip. Now, there's a few ways to go about this, people, and I've showed you some with some joint compound compound and some texturing. Here's another one. You can just distress the piece, get you some paint, make sure your paintbrush is fairly dry, and then go over it lightly, and it will hide all those pile ups and gunk ups and just look like one solid piece. And here is the beautiful napkin we are going to be using to create our accent pieces onto our pegboard. And before I start getting comments about where did I get the napkin, I am actually selling this particular napkin in one of my napkin kits on my website. The link is in the description box. I recently did a thrift flip where I took one napkin and ripped it up to make it into one gorgeous piece. Isn't this beautiful? So the idea for this napkin was being used the same way with the accent pieces for this pegboard. Now here's me pointing around to show you exactly how big I wanted to make this pegboard. I actually wanted it to have about 7 rows going. You see how I'm holding it like that? So it could really be on your wall, and you could use hooks and hangers and little wire pieces to really just kind of hang whatever type of shelving, put florals in there, whatever. I just wanted to inspire you. This way you could use it in any room of your house for anything. Now, if you've never decoupaged with napkins before, there are several layers of a napkin, and you want to get down to your last layer. I like to leave them ripped mostly, but for this one in particular, it's going inside of our faux shadow box, and I'm just cutting it to size. And then I'm going to use Mod Podge to attach it on the inside. I like to use 4 napkins, that is. I like to use very thin layers with the napkins, with the decoupage, and see how I'm just scooping that extra out there. I personally feel like the more Mod Podge we're tossing in there, the clumpier your napkin is and the easier it is for, you know, you to rip. But you do you want to use 10 piles of Mod Podge, you know, power to you. I will not judge you. And in case you didn't know, I also have a decoupage tips and tricks, you know, video, hints, whatever you want to call it, and you're welcome to check that out. I'll put that in the description box. On a little side note, people, the DIYer in me went and got a drill and a drill bit. I was going to drill a hole in this instead of just using the hole puncher on this piece of paper-ish box, paper mache box. Also, I recently asked in a video little tips or tricks that people use to easily get twine or rope through a hole, because I usually take a piece of painter's tape and pull it through, and this was recommended to glue the end together. Now, of course, make sure it's cooled off and then put it through the hole. And I love this. You guys rock. I'll use to put this little gem in the comments. I love you. Look at that. It's magnifique-amazing. Now, getting back to the idea of using one napkin to, you know, do an entire piece and just kind of make it look cohesive, I'm using the bottom part of this napkin on our little basket that we are going to hang off of our pegboard. And this way, if I want to switch out the 2 pieces, the little accented decor pieces, I can and change it up, or I can make matching pieces that go along the whole thing. And I just really love For this decoupage wall decor, we're going to need 3 tumbling blocks glued together like this. And we're going to need 4 sets of these and 1 of the long pallets. This part is important though if you're trying to get as square as you can get. You do not want like 2 in the middle, 2 on the ends. You're going to kind of like overlap. So you'll have 1 overlapping the bottom on the other for all of these to where it's kind of like a square, you know. So be mindful as you're using your hot glue and your wood glue. So this way it is pressing in those seams, like where they meet, in just the right places. And on the very last one, I had to kind of do like at the same time, so this way when I pressed it, I didn't have to try and peel it back apart on the last one, like in the little last section. I hope that makes sense. If not, you know, I'm trying to show you in the video. See how it's 2 connecting points here? So there's the one and then there's the other. I didn't want to have to peel the other one up if I only did one side first. I hope that makes sense. You're going to let this dry, and once it's dry, we're going to spray paint these. Now, I've said this before that You know, I like to spray paint everything at the same time, and I didn't show you all at one time in the video, and the only reason is because I used different colors and couldn't put them all in the same box or I'd get them all sprayed on top of each other. I had to do these like one at a time. So this is why it's sectioned off today. But you know, I still gotta show you some spray paint. I gotta show my spray paint people some love. Look how pretty it is. Oh, I just love how this turned out. And this is all we're going to do. We're going to put that palette on the center of that. Now it's time to pick your napkin, and we're going to be using this and specifically cutting out the home sweet home section. Now, you're going to also want to make sure that you get those extra sneaky layers off the back before you start your decoupage. Lucky for me, this only had one ply, and then I'm just trimming it down to size. The words were not going to lay perfectly on the little palette, you know, pieces, so I decided to carefully cut them out. If you're going to do a decoupage like this, where you want the words to show, don't get too worried if your napkin overhangs or doesn't overhang. If you throw some Mod Podge like I'm doing on here, like lather it on up, once it's all dry, you just take yourself a sandpaper and that stuff's going to come right off. Feel free to skip this part entirely if you're happy with it. I felt like it was a little plain and wanted to add some twine around the edges. And I didn't get wild with it and layer the whole thing. I just, you know, did 3 wraps on each side of the corner just to give it a little something. And I just glued it down on the back. And then I'm only using hot glue for this. You can use E6000 or your Gorilla Glue gel, whatever makes you fuzzy inside. And that was it for this one, people. This gorgeous piece I found on Pinterest inspired me so much, especially because I have a ton of Dollar Tree glass just sitting in my craft stash. So now's the time. We're gonna put some of that hoard to use. For the frame, I grabbed some tumbling blocks and just lined this out. Now we're gonna need to do this on the front and the back, because if you've ever used these little glass pieces before, you know that they're very, very, very delicate. You're gonna need 18 blocks for the front and 18 for the back. That's a total of 36 for this frame. When I had it all mapped out and knew what I needed, I grabbed my paint color, and I decided to just stick with yellow and grab some of my Waverly chalk paint in the maize color. Everyone has their own way of painting tumbling tower blocks, but if I'm gonna give you my way, I give you my way with disdain, because I absolutely hate painting the suckers. And I've spray painted them before, I've shoved them in a baggie before. It is all very tedious and time-taking waiting for them to dry like that. So the quickest way I find is to smush them together like this, paint them all up, turn them as they dry, and use my heat gun to speed it all up. We're gonna use tacky glue for the attachment, no hot glue at all. I find that whenever I try to use hot glue on glass, it just kind of creates more of a frustration than a good connection. And I know tacky glue does well for me whenever I'm using fabric on glass or wood on glass or even plastic pieces to glass. So I'm just going to trace a nice line all around the edges where we're going to put the frame, and then start laying down our blocks one by one. When I was completely done attaching the first section of our tumbling blocks, I put this to the side to dry for a few hours before I moved on with the rest of the project. In preparation for doing the backside, I took 2 of the tumbling blocks and glued them together with some tacky glue. This was so I could create the hanger later on down the line once these were completely adhered to each other. When your tacky glue is mostly dry, since you're doing this on glass, it's easy to check. You just flip it over and see if it's clear and it no longer have that thick white residue between the glass and the wood. You can also shimmy little pieces just to make sure that they're really attached on here. For the design in the center of the frame, I'm going to be just using some of these stickers I picked up from Temu some time ago and some dry rub on transfers. I wanted to share with y'all that it doesn't just have to be one or the other. You can absolutely use different things to create amazing designs on these glass frames. And people, if you're super talented, you could even paint the design on the glass. It really, you know, take the idea and remix it to whatever works for your artistic DIY style. And then just layer according to what you think looks best. And if I'm being honest, this probably took me about 30 minutes. And off camera, what you don't see is me putting the pieces into place, removing them, putting the pieces into place, removing them. I didn't think y'all would want to watch me and waste your valuable viewing time on all of that. But I don't want y'all at home thinking I did that quick and easy and layered it. Nope, it took me a minute, y'all, and I was very picky with my placement. I think they turned out okay. When I was happy with all that, I just flipped it over, did the same exact step, taking the tacky glue, tracing the whole thing. And to start off, I put one of my favorite sawtooth hammer and hangers in those two tumbling blocks that we had glued together earlier. I brought on in the wonky hammer, and lucky for y'all, I remember what this is called today. A ball peen hammer. I'm pretty sure that's what so many people, every time I'm like, it's a wonky hammer, people are like, Brainy, it's a ball peen hammer. This is my little baby hammer I keep next to me. I used this to attach our little sawtooth hammer and hanger into the two pieces that we glued together, and then I placed them first and then just followed the pattern around the frame. I don't know that this piece is as beautiful as the original. I really, really love that piece, but I do think mine turned out pretty good. And I feel like now I have an extra idea for all that glass I have stored to the side for more DIYs for the Dollar Tree glass pieces in the frames. If you're looking for more Dollar Tree DIY inspiration, check out this video right here. People, as always, thank y'all so much for hanging out with me today. I hope you enjoyed these top 10 viewer favorite tumbling block DIYs, and until next time.